There are times when you need to override the end of quarter grade for a student. For example, maybe they have pass-fail, or maybe you need to give them an incomplete for a while so that they can finish up the work. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to go to grade setup because we need to make a specific column visible that we did not have visible previously. Okay, and in this case, we want to see the grade period override columns because we're going to override the score that they received for that particular grading period. So we're going to check that box and hit Save Changes. And now when we go into our grade book, we're going to have a column here that we didn't previously have. So I'm going to go into full screen mode, and I'm going to narrow this down to fourth quarter. Okay. So here I have overall, this is overall for the year, and we actually hide this from students and from parents because we don't really want them to see the overall for the year. We allow ProSoft to calculate their overalls, but for you, you will have that in there. Now I have this extra column that I didn't previously have, and this icon lets you know that this is the column where you're going to be overriding the calculated grade for the quarter. Okay, and excuse me, we only fill in the cells of a student that we need to actually override something for. So perhaps you have a student who is using converted grades and the special education teacher has been working with you and explained to you that you need to override a score. So perhaps here I might need to override the student, instead of getting a 79, perhaps they are, the converted grading scale takes them up to an 84. You may notice that the overall score did change when I did that. Okay. But I can always see what the student actually earned here inside of the calculated percentage column. Okay, so that does not change. This now would be the score that's being pulled in for that student when we import the scores into ProSoft in order to print the report cards. Now what happens if you have a student who is pass-fail? So in this case, I have a student who's earned a 76, but this is a student who is pass-fail for us. And so in this case, a 3 is going to be passing, and we have a cheat sheet for you that will explain all of these. I'm still getting used to what the numbers are. A 3 is going to be passing, and so you would literally just put a 3 in there. Okay, and ProSoft knows that when it imports a 3, it's going to override that 3, and it's going to put a P into that student score on the report card. Okay, if you have a student who has been gone for a while and they need to take some time to complete things, they always have that 2-week window if we grant them for incompletes. So an incomplete is going to be a 2. So when ProSoft sees a 2 being pulled in, it overrides the 2 and it puts the I in there. The flip side of a pass would be a fail. Obviously that one's going to be a 4, and then the last designation that we have is a medical, which is a 5. We don't use that one as often as the incompletes or the pass. Okay, and so you can't see that here inside of your grade book. You don't see the P or the I, but just know that you can look for that when you get your grade verification sheets from your building secretary, whoever prints off the grade verification sheets. Okay, and so this student who has the incomplete, I'm going to leave the 2 in there for a while, and when those 2 weeks are up, all I need to do is I need to come back in here, I need to delete this score, and now, they'd be receiving the 83 instead. Okay, now, what if a student actually earns a score of a 3 or a 2? I guess really anything from a 2 to a 5, because those are the designations that we have that are going to be overridden by ProSoft. If you happen to have a student who actually earns and deserves a 2, 3, 4, or a 5%, of course the lowest that they get on the report card is a 50, but if you have a student who ever actually earns that score, then you're going to want to communicate that to myself or to your building secretary who takes care of printing report cards. Okay, because that is definitely something that we would not want that score to be overridden and for them to receive a pass or an incomplete or something like that on their report card. So for the most part, we've worked out the bugs, but there are just a few things like this one that I'm not really super happy with how it works because there's room for error, but if we communicate, then we'll make sure that we're not going to have any issues. So that's how you would override scores. And again, if the student doesn't need a score overridden, you just leave it blank, and that's okay too. And if you wanted to, you could go back into the grade scale, or excuse me, the grade setup, and you could hide this column again, if you just didn't want it hanging out there as something extra taking up space inside of the gradebook. But that's how we override final grades for a quarter.